All right, it is time for another Bull in the Basement video long-form Q&A podcast with an old friend of mine. And I don't mean that chronologically, Vic. I just mean we go back a little bit.
That's accurate, though, the chronological.
People could mistake that, right? But I was not taking a shot. Vic Carucci, of course, former president of the Pro Football Writers Association of America. If there were a Hall of Fame of football writers, you would be in it. Buffalo News, Bills, Browns, NFL.com, Sirius XM, WGRZ TV, all of those things you've done. You've authored, is it 10 books now? Are you on 10?
Actually, 11.
11 now, okay.
Number 11. That
wasn't sure.
Over my shoulder, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of noticed a little product placement there. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
You've learned a little marketing in your media days.
You got it.
And we're going to talk about that book in a second and about the books you've written. And let me just, hi, first of all.
Yeah, hello. Great to see you. Way too long that we've not had a discussion of any kind, but certainly a football. I mean, I know we've talked and texted, but I'm talking like our football discussion. And I miss that. I miss talking with you on a regular basis about football.
For sure. And we're going to talk some football. But Vic, these podcasts that I do are generally about the people that I talk to. So it's going to be a lot about you. Okay. So I'm going to take you back to the Boilermaker. I'm going to take you back to FX Matt and all that stuff. And White Spur. No, I'm kidding. You are a Utica native.
I won't remember. Hey, remember that chronological thing? I won't remember half of it. So you'll be challenging me too much, Rich.
Very good. Your nickname, okay, I'm going to start you with a really, really hard question. Your nickname is the Commish. Hypothetically, if you became the real Commish today, what's the first thing you do?
Wow. I've actually pondered that. I mean, so a lot of it is just because you're so close to the situation, right? Covering the NFL for as long as I have and actually covering 3 commissioners. I mean, going all the way back to Pete Rozelle and being there when he hung it up, when he announced a surprise retirement at a league meeting in California. And then I remember talking with Ralph Wilson at the time about like the next commissioner. And Ralph said, our next commissioner needs to have a legal background. So because of all the litigation the NFL was getting, Al Davis was suing, you had the United States Football League, all that stuff back and forth. And it was an uneasy, unfriendly time, frankly, for the NFL. And when I heard those words, it made me pause because I tell the story because my first instinct is that of a football guy. When I hear a longtime owner and truly a lover of football, Ralph Wilson, besides being a businessman that he was, say that we need someone that can handle legal issues. Now, I guess that was his way of previewing the fact that he was in favor of Paul Tagliabue, who would be the eventual commissioner or the replacement for Pete Rozelle. And, Pete came from a place of marketing and PR. And then, fast forward to Roger Goodell taking over, and probably the most noticed of all or the most discussed of all the commissioners, in a lot of bad ways, of course, but certainly many good ways, the growth of the game and all of that. And Roger comes from a place of politics, his dad, right? Great politician, and a football place. He played the game in high school, college. And I feel like the commissioner that I would want to be, certainly I have zero legal background. I can't call myself a PR guy in the classic sense, even though in our line of work, as you know, Bull, you work with many PR people and you sort of get a feel for that and the marketing end of it. But I'd like to be I guess in some ways, the content commissioner in this sense. The first thing I think I would do, even though the NFL has tried reasonably hard to, let me rephrase that, tried to pull back the curtain with like these Hard Knocks shows and the different things that let people see what's behind the curtain. And me being someone has loved that series for the most part. I didn't think it was so great this summer with Dallas, but overall enjoying the behind the scenes, because I've gotten to see a lot of the behind the scenes, and even some of the behind the scenes that I had never seen show up on Hard Knocks. and maybe now it gets a little redundant, but I'd want much more of an open feel to this game. I think the league still gets caught in this time warp of secrecy and paranoia. And I know it's driven by the heritage of coaching, which is we don't reveal anything, we don't tip anything. There isn't anything new under the sun anymore. It's a fallacy that I think coaches believe that they're dealing with these top secret, dealing with all this well guarded stuff that has to be, kept like you're dealing with the Pentagon or something. And I don't know that works anymore. I think the game has evolved and content has evolved and ability to absorb it has evolved to the point where just blow it all open. Let us have those cameras that are in the draft room for a little bit of time during the draft. That should be in all the meeting rooms in the league. And every coach, every game plan preparation, every conversation I want heard. It doesn't have to be, this is exactly what we're going to do against the Jets or the Bill, and vice versa, or the Patriots. But instead of this whole idea of it's shrouded and we're guessing and thinking, put it all out there, make the whole thing an open book. That's what I would do. And of course it would get shot down immediately by every coach, or I'd get literally shot, I think, for wanting to do it. But that's what I do. I'd go to my, I think, area of strength, which is, the content thing, right? You've had legal commissioners and they fought legal battles. You had the marketing, PR, you had combination. And even though Roger has tried some of that, and I was part of it with NFL.com and so forth, but my version would be wide open.
I never, ever pictured you being the TikTok commissioner.
I don't know. First of all, I don't know what, I know what TikTok is. I would be lost. I'd have my kids show me how to,
right.
My adult daughters and their husbands or whatever, show me about all that, how that works. I've never done one, but I know, I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily even think it's the TikTok. I'd want it to be the full blown, again, video, because people can't get enough. And here's the other, I'm more serious about this part. We're moving to the age, as you know, where gambling is the next great frontier for the NFL from a revenue stream standpoint, right? And the league is embracing that in ways that I never conceived possible. You think my ideas are those that you would never conceive happening. Gambling, which I thought would, team in Vegas and the whole approach of how even the discussion of a new stadium, I know we'll get into that, but here and other places is all really driven by the infrastructure that allows for the best level of communication with this thing, with the phones and your ability to be connected and place all kinds of prop bets and other bets in the course of a game, right? So let people hear and see it all. Give them as much information as possible so they can at least make semi-intelligent bets, even though I don't know if it's intelligent to ever bet.
Right. It's funny because I had written that down and one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and it's pure conspiracy theorism. And I don't even like asking the question. And you know what? I'm not going to, but I'll refer to it. Just the way the league's been the last 3 weeks with humongous underdogs winning games and lots of them. It's not been this one fluke a week. It's been a bunch a week over the last 3. And so I could totally see conspiracy theorists saying, oh, well, the money now, gambling, right? DraftKings is going to be legal on your device in New York very shortly, and ESPN's got a show every single weeknight at 5:30 dedicated to gambling and the lines. Forget about football, but every sport. Premier League soccer, right. They have lines for it. Everything you possibly gamble on. So I won't ask you the question because I think it is relatively ridiculous, but is it?
I'm not. Yeah, I don't do the tinfoil hat thing all that much. In fact, I don't do it at all. I try not to do it at all. I'm not Oliver Stone, and I don't try to pretend to be him either, with the whole conspiracy theory idea. But I can see why eyebrows get raised and why all of a sudden, we saw this onslaught of crazy outcomes of what we didn't anticipate. And I mean, the lines that were put out by the folks in Vegas on multiple games, I think there were like double-digit favorites that ended up losing, and some of them by big double-digit margins. So where does that come from? Part of me, none of it, I don't think, is tied to trying to drive this whole gambling conversation or revenue ability, a revenue generating ability forward. I think if that's a function of it, it's a function of it. But I think that would be a function of it regardless. I think it has a lot more to do, though, with the state of the game, that we are in a league now where, first of all, with 17 games over an 18-game spread, that one extra game has changed, I think, the mentality, the dynamic. You heard Tom Brady publicly. Now people have heard him whine and complain about a lot of things in and out of games. I thought he made a pretty salient point, though, about his opposition to this additional game and how you're not even at the halfway point when you think you're the halfway point of the regular season, what that milestone means to players, their mentality. And I think the level you with injuries accumulating, with just the whole stress and the time strain that goes with preparation each week, the Thursday night football disease, if you want to call that, where you get zero time to prepare for one of the grand stages of the game. Zero time. I mean, literally, there are teams that virtually don't practice, put in a limited amount of plays, and just play on your skill and stuff like that. I think all of that adds up to I'm not going to say it's a product you can't depend on, but it's definitely one that gets wonky, that can have some imbalance and moments where, you think you're applying logic to how these games are going to look and play out, talent versus talent. I think we're at a stage where if mentally, and by the way, players, I believe now have far more to, I'm going to use that word distraction. It's a weak one, but far more to distract them, far more to pull their attention away from the job at hand than ever. And that's just a function of society. I'm not carping about that. I'm not complaining. It just is. And I don't know that you're getting full attentive focus, everything that you need to, quote, play that best game that you and I think. We're looking at the matchup and we're looking at stats and numbers, and that is another part of this equation is analytic contribution to our thinking of each game, and those stat breakdowns and the history and what trends. We get caught up in those to the point where we believe they're infallible, and guess what? They are. They can fail. They aren't infallible. Let me rephrase that. But you're dealing with a human condition here, and the balance can be tipped very easily.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that points to maybe adding another bye week if you're going to keep, right, adding another bye week. But if you do that, now the season's into almost late February. So now instead of going that way, maybe you go backwards. And now this talks more about eliminating more preseason games, I'm assuming, right? I mean,
and here's the thing, Bull, too, is how much is too much? NFL ratings our TV ratings are up, are doing well, rebounded strong from last year. And last year was such a 2020, and not that 2021's been by any means a perfect smooth ride, but 2020 with a lot of unknowns, and again, every time you have like an election cycle that comes up, how that impacts eyeballs away from the sport. That's just what history shows us. But in terms of the TV product, and this is what ownership of teams, these billionaires who own these teams look for. Guess what? More billions. They want a bigger audiences, bigger attraction, obviously bigger attendance, but The money driver is that gigantic, massive, unbelievable TV contract, and how to make that, how to just expand that abundance of cash. And but the key to the NFL's success has long been putting the guardrails in, knowing how far you go one way or the other with numbers of games, where they're positioned on the calendar, keeping people wanting and desiring the thing, you're making that an addiction, if you will, of I got to have more, but are you going to give them too much? And this Thursday night product was that, they added that on knowing full well, coaches certainly did, and general managers certainly did, and I'm sure team owners did. It's not going to look as pretty a lot of times on Thursday as it does on Sunday. It's going to be maybe a brand of football that's going to throw people off. And, but we've had Thanksgiving Day games, and those draw insane numbers because it's a captive audience. And that went from 1 to 2 to now 3. And that's what's driving it. But to your point about the calendar, when is it habit wise? When do we want to stop it? When do we want to put the stop on and then get to our off season? And that's the tricky side. The Super Bowl is going to be played later than ever this year, right? It's got that later time stamp on it, still into February, but we are going to blink and be dealing with, the offseason, the draft, the whole works, and barely have just gotten over whatever the Super Bowl is. And that's what you've got to think about, and why these other leagues that have tried XFL and the different, and even the USFL way back in the day, for those who remember, people's habits didn't fit when those games were played. Spring's not for football. Fall is football. Cold weather's football.
More and listen, more. I mean, but it's simple season progression, right? Like if you're in any type of 4 seasonal or 3 seasonal climate, I mean, you're indoors in the fall and early winter, right? And nobody wants to be indoors in the spring and summer. I don't care how much they love football. I don't want to be indoors watching a football game in spring and summer. I want to be outdoors doing things that I've waited 5 months to be able to do, right?
Absolutely. That's the other thing is just your life habits, what you want to do. A lot of folks who live in, Western New York, the northern regions of the country, you get to January, February, they want to go south for a little while. They want to unplug. That doesn't mean they can't follow the Bills and football there, because they do and they will, and we know all of that. But it's still not the same as the weekly traditions and all of that that's built around this game. So the NFL is careful about that. And look, it's just about a 3-hour commitment of time each time you watch it. It's a perfect grid for television, the way the game appears on the screen, right? All of that was long thought out by, very smart people who understood, and timeouts and pauses, all the things that, some sport like soccer and others you don't get, that don't translate as well to TV. So football is about as perfectly translatable to television as any live event can be.
All right, so we're going in a way different direction than I thought this was going to, and that's fine, because this just enables us to do another one of these at another point. Sure. Because I really want to spend and give people an eye into you, but because we're now sort of
go ahead. Because, I mean, as long as you want to, I'm fine. I'm with you.
So because we got into the commission, now we're into the league, and this is important because these are things that we need to talk about, right? So I'll go to the officiating now. So much has been made, especially in the last week, the Tony Carucci thing, too many taunting flags. Why are some officials in one game throwing double the flags than they are in another? Or why is one crew throwing more flags than any other crew historically through the span of the first 10, 11 weeks of a season? What do you say to that? And to my knowledge, there isn't, I mean, Perry Fuel's like the guy, but he's not really the guy, right? I mean,
yeah, well, look, in terms of, you've got Al Riveron, you've got others, involved with the leagues, but the names aren't important. It's the structure of what happens with regard to officiating now. And the structure is built on the best technology we've ever had in watching this game. And I still believe it comes down to that. I hear the complaints. I hear they've got it in for the Bills, or they've got, and yet you can see the same calls that drive fans of other teams. In 32 fan bases, you've got officiating frustration, or you've had it at various points to the same levels as you've had it here. And I don't buy, and I've heard people tell me it's a Buffalo. They don't want Buffalo to succeed, and it's the biggest bunch of bull that, no offense, that you could hear, because that is not what this is about. Again, the last I checked, the investment by the Pagulas in the billions is as welcome as any other owners, and that's who runs this league. The team owners are the league. Okay, it's a billionaires club, and Terry and Kim Pagula are in that as much as pretty much anyone else. Maybe their wealth doesn't compare to others, and it exceeds others. So don't give me this, their business is getting the short end because theirs is the Buffalo Bills. It is about what we notice and what we see. And you're part of a generation, unlike me, that can go back to, obviously when I first fell in love with this game in the late 60s, okay, and then early 70s, and when it really became a TV sport. But it was a TV sport minus the TV technology that we now take basically for granted, which is the highest resolution, the closest magnified replay, the slowest moving, to where you can fractionally see the foot as it is or isn't
from every camera angle too, right?
And every imaginable camera angle.
Yeah.
That is what is influence. That now, once again, this is not a complaint, but this is a realization. Do we really believe officiating today, the people who handle officiating in the here and now, are far worse at their job than Art McNally was in the 70s, many years ago, or Jerry Seaman, or all these other officials? These are top officiating names in the history of this game, that were they were great. They were eagle-eyed. They were sharp-eyed. No, they weren't. And mistakes were made. We just didn't see as many of the mistakes. And the stats that count those receptions and yards and wins and outcomes and all that stand then. With maybe you go back, Franco Harris, the immaculate reception, one of the iconic plays in football history. Would that have, how would that have worked out in today's NFL? It may not have. Right. It may not have happened. And yet there's a statue of that you ever go through the Pittsburgh airport? There's a statue of that play, and it might have been eliminated by today's technology. Again, let's understand what we have now. And you know what? You asked me, I got to back up to the first question about what I might do as a commissioner. Just to end all this discussion, we could, and I'm sure these things have already been created, but let's go to MIT. Let's go to all these brainiac institutions and have them outfit every element of this game with the various chips and indicators and sensory and everything else that can prevent human error. It's doable. You could put, the chip in the ball and the goal line and whatever, and there's no question about what got over the pylon, whatever beam you want to create, make it, just like you would again in if you wanted to in a Madden type video game, just make it that antiseptic, that scientific. The thing that still makes me laugh to this day is, and I've got one of them behind me here, is what do coaches do on the side, the play callers do when they're on the side? They cover their mouth with a big sheet of plays written on it. Wait a minute, that can't be electric, electronic, that can't be digital, that can't have little, come on. They're still using the sheet with a marker. Really? I mean, and I think it's to give the illusion that there's still some human element to this game. So how much human do we want and how much robotic do we want? Because when people complain about officiating, they're complaining about humans not necessarily seeing things in real time and I dare anyone, and including myself. I mean, I'm not saying I'm I would see it and they wouldn't. I wouldn't see it. And my eyes at this stage of my life, I'm sure, aren't going to see what a younger person's eyes would see. But still, even at that, bang, bang, pressure, stadium, boom, boom. Oh, the replay saw this. Well, how the heck could that guy miss? Come on, just be reasonable about it all. We think it's worse, but we see more, and that's what tells us. And last thing, if this were a real problem, if the league thought this were a real problem, now again, they could change crews, and they do. They hire new officials every year. People retire, this and that, or get retired. But the bottom line is, are TV ratings going down because of it? Is attendance suffering because of it? That's the only thing that talks to, you talk about player safety, you talk about that. If those are real issues with fans, that's how you judge it. And as you and I speak right now, it's not an issue.
The game is still gold. The game is still gold, for sure. You famously, again, have written a bunch of books, and I definitely want to get to the one behind you. But you, and I know you've answered this in a lot of different interviews since everything happened within the last month about John Gruden. You did a book with John Gruden. Now the news is that supposedly he's going to sue the NFL. I guess I have a couple of questions. Number one,
sure,
who's reading 650,000 emails? I mean, who's doing that? Who's got? I'd love to compute that time into what that equals and how many people divided up that would have to be able to do that in any kind of a timely fashion. That's number one. Number two, if all this happens, is there any trouble spots that the NFL has to worry about in terms of bumps in their road?
Yeah, I have no idea about that. It does overwhelm me to think about the 650,000 emails. I barely can go through my own that, accumulate in the course of the week. And, your red flag, you do what you need to do to go back to certain things. But I will often, I'll say, oh yeah, I'll get back to that person. And sometimes you forget. So someone's pouring over 650,000 or people or whatever the team is that's doing it. And what they may or may not find. I mean, it makes you pause and think, but it also has taken me back and I think others back to, working for a company. And I did look, I worked for the Cleveland Browns for a while. I worked for the NFL for a while in their systems. And when they assign you equipment, like, laptops or phones, mobile phones, tablets, whatever it might be, that's their equipment. That is, I presumed, and it's stated you get, at least the Browns, they give you a letter right with it. And I think one of it was stuck on the back. Keep in mind, this is the property of, okay. And the servers are listed as those that belong to the Browns and the National Football League. So you're part of that world. So anything if you had any doubt about what it is you're discussing in that forum, understand you're not having any one-to-one private conversation or one to whoever your group that you're emailing to or something, or texting to, or on the phone with. That's just, to me, that's common sense. How it translated with this, I don't know. Now I'll answer this about John before you even ask it. John and I did a book together 18 years ago, had a blast doing it. It was called Do You Love Football? And dynamic personality, everything that you saw from him, especially when he was the TV guy, the ESPN guy. But at the time he was coaching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The book was the result of the Bucs. I mean, it followed that Super Bowl championship, and he's a hot property. The Buccaneers are a hot property. And the book does exceptionally well. It's a bestseller. Again, the only credit I'll take is just capturing his voice, which is the job of a co-author, and it's written in the first person. And we spent, a good amount of time on it, months putting it together. Started pretty much immediately, like after I think the Pro Bowl, the deal was put together, I think after the Pro Bowl of that following that season in Hawaii when it was there, with his agent and so forth, and my agent. And, again, the deal you make is with the publisher. You're not paid by the co-author or anybody else. It's separate agreements that you're reaching. There's an overall agreement on, deadline of the book and the amount of, number of words, all that mostly the deadline, but the marketing and all of that. And most of the marketing and PR that's focused on him, not me, even though my name's on it. But we're again paid separately from that. But it is a business transaction, and yes, the burden falls on the writer to deliver the manuscript after going through all the 50 odd hours or so of interviews we did. Well, I spent a lot of time with him in the course of the months that we wrote that book. As I say, 18 years ago, there was zero in the course of that time that gave me even the most minute impression that what surfaced in those emails was, that John Gruden. I didn't know any of that. I didn't see any of that. I saw a guy that I enjoyed being around, and I got to tell you, he was tough, tough in the sense of, his perfection, wanting the book to turn out well, and pushing me as well as, the publisher. We're going to get this done right. I mean, he's a coach, and he acted like a coach in good ways, but I always knew that we had it, line by line when we edited this thing. And at one point I let out a sigh. At one point, we were going through this, and I was sitting I would have had my back to you, but I was on a speakerphone with him working on the manuscript, and I don't know, an hour and a half into our discussion, or maybe 90 minutes, I was maybe almost 2 hours into our discussion, I go like that. Well, he hears it, it's audible. And he goes, "Was that a sigh? Did I just hear you sigh? You sighed, didn't you sigh? You sighed, didn't you?" I said, "No, John, that's okay. It's fine. No. I heard you sigh. Tell me, let me ask you a question. No one put a gun to your head to say you're going to do this book. You made a decision that you wanted to be a part of this, right? Isn't that true? You signed up to work with a grinder, and I'm grinding. We're grinding right now." And that's the kind of thing. And he was being himself, that character, but it was also an example of what you were working with. The guy was definitely wanted this thing. And you know what? I said, this is great, because this thing's going to turn out really well, because the voice and everything, all of it. And again, it was of these 11. Well, we'll see how this one turns out as far as this success and sales. That thing was number one. I mean, it was a tremendously successful book. But again, I credit him for doing that.
Okay, well, since you mentioned it, and it's above your right shoulder, your second book with
Yes.
Hall of Fame General Manager Bill Polian, Super Bowl Blueprints.
Cardboard part. This is a picture of the cover, but it's Super Bowl Blueprints, and it's. There, you can see that pretty well, right? Okay.
Yep.
So this thing is, it's the longest book I've written. It's got
almost 500 pages, right?
500 pages. Yeah. 450,000 words. Yeah. Just under 500 pages, but it's an oral history. So this subtitle here about the Hall of Famers, this way, Vic. Okay. Hall of Famers and what they reveal.
Yeah.
What we did was Bill and I, and it was Bill's idea to do. Now, Bill and I did a book called The Game Plan a while, 2014.
I read, and it's phenomenal.
Thank you. And again, credit Bill. He wanted to share, and he shared a lot. I mean, he pulled out operational manuals that he created in the course of his career as an NFL GM. The how-tos of hiring a coach, of selecting players, of everything, running a football team. And it was mostly about that. It was less autobiographical and more of the how-to. This one, when the same publisher came back to him and said, "Hey, would you like to do, we did really well with the first one. We think you'd be great to do another one." And this was more than a year ago that he, it was around 2019, toward the end of 2019, or yeah, I think it was right before the pandemic. And he reaches out to me and said, "Would you have any interest in working with me on another book?" And I didn't hear any other detail. I just said, "Sure." That was my answer. Only because I knew the pro that he is, I knew it would be smart and great. And goes, "Okay, this is what I have in mind." And he starts to tell me about this. Let's capture, in each chapter, we would talk about the iconic Super Bowl eras, going, the Raiders and the Steelers and the, Giants. And I'm thinking of this, and it sounds, and I'm getting all excited. I'm getting all excited about it and all worked up. And he goes, and what I'd like to do is like talk to all the principals that are involved, the living ones that are involved with these. And I'm starting to, okay. And it's now occurring to me that this is going to be a heck of a lot of work and time and effort. And turns out we can, and so his vision was that we would do this, you know, and we eventually came to the idea of it being oral history format, that each chapter would have all these voices that he and I would interview. He'd lead the interview and lead each chapter. He said, think of me as the stage manager of our town, of the play Our Town. And I said, that's, you know, I thought back to high school. Okay, that makes sense. That's a pretty good role for you to sort of be like the narrator type guy who sets it up and then interjects his thoughts along the way. There was more than 32, around 32, it was more than 30. I want to say 32 people that we interviewed from every level: team owners, coaches, front general managers, players, all for the most part, former. Jerry Jones is in here, you know, but generally and John Mara from the Giants, Art Rooney II from the Steelers. So active ownership people, but retired coaches, you know, Jimmy Johnson, and so forth, and former Terry Bradshaw, Mean Joe Green, Steve Young. We got it, and every one of them gave us at least 2.5 hours, at least two, but for the average time, I think, came to about 2 hours and 15 minutes on Zoom on a call like this. Bill would be in North Carolina, you know, Terry Bradshaw was wherever he was. I was right. Jerry Jones, of course, was on a yacht in the Bahamas as we interviewed him, of course. And it was so funny. And he was one of the longest. I think we almost went 3 hours with him, but he goes, you know, I'm going to get emotional during this book. I'm going to get emotional during this interview. Talking about football. I'm going to start crying. I'm going to probably start crying. And he talked about like having therapy for this, like, you know, that he gets so worked up and choked up. And he said, and he goes, if I'm rambling too long on stuff, you just stop me. You just shut me up. Yeah. Okay, Jerry, we're going to shut you up.
Right.
You're going to, but it was incredible. And the passion. I mean, Terry Bradshaw talks about a extremely rough relationship with Chuck Noll. I mean, he bears his soul about that relationship, where it went to the lowest to his highest, of course, as a Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame player. And I have to tell you, it was an experience of a lifetime to spend that amount of time with, you know, Peyton Manning on Bill's Colts teams, Tony Dungy, just incredible people who told these, and you felt immersed in it. It was, as much as I thought I knew about the league and the game and history, these historic moments. Bill Parcells talking to us. I found out so much more after this, and even hearing the flip side, the Giants side of those Super Bowls. Although we did get the Bill side, Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, Frank Reich, they're all in there too. But really incredible stuff.
Where can people find it? Because obviously anybody that's part of Bills Mafia / Galaxy, interplanetary Bills fans, wherever they might be, probably a good nod, wink, wink Christmas gift for somebody, right?
Yeah, no nod, wink, wink. It's a great Christmas gift. Go get it. It's available, of course, you know, wherever you normally buy books, Amazon. There's if you just go to, if that's your comfortable way of buying books. And I know they tend to offer like various discounts. And if you get the e-edition, it's the downloadable one to your Kindle or whatever. If you like to read books that way, obviously that's priced accordingly. But I think the hard, I want to say $28, something like that. Very reasonable for the amount that you get. And here's the thing. It's not, you don't have to be a Bills, even though there's a Bills chapter and it's Bill Polian throughout. You don't have to be a Bills fan, I don't think, to appreciate. If you like football, this book will speak to you, and these stories will speak to you, because even in rereading that, you know, going over it for the 1,000th time when you're editing and so forth, I still found myself immersed. I kept saying, dang, you know, I can't believe we got that. Like, we got that out of him. Steve Young bringing Bill Walsh to life, like what that relation, and Steve Young being this super smart man that he is, Brian Billick, sharing when he was working as an assistant, an underling for Bill Walsh, and the things that he saw, that unique perspective. Mike Holmgren, Mike talked about the 49ers, and of course gave his version of the West Coast offense as it evolved from San Francisco to what he had with Brett Favre in Green Bay. So really interesting stuff. Ron Wolf, another Hall of Famer. Anyway.
That's awesome stuff. You're right. Anybody that's a football fan and knows football from the last 30, 40 years is going to enjoy the read. Okay, so I know we don't have a ton of time. So you mentioned Jerry Jones. He's got a relationship with the Pagulas and Stadium.
Right.
Go.
Yeah, Stadium. Go. Well, of course, like anyone else, I mean, I'd love to see this for our community living here, and as I hope the rest of my life is spent here, however long that is. My kids born and raised here, their kids born and raised here, so many family and friends, that this is, to me, a piece of the community that should be good for the community. And the good that I think it should do should go well beyond what it does for the revenue of the owners of the Bills and their partners in the NFL. I believe the Orchard Park idea is a short-sighted idea. I think it's an idea that fulfills only, let's just get something newer than what we've got. Yeah, we'll have the infrastructure. Yeah, we'll have all this, stuff that, and the dirt's cheaper there, and all. And there's some common sense elements that sound fine with that, but it's not doing the job that this is you get one shot to do this right. In our lifetime, long after I pass, there'll be someone else doing it. But as far as I see for the foreseeable future, you got one shot to do this incredible thing. Figure it out in a way that benefits our community. And I look at downtown Buffalo as there's an untapped gem that could be brought to life there if done properly, with foresight, with thinking. And I hear all these cost issues, but I've yet to hear the revenue issue, because I think there is something to that over the long haul, and how it spread out and how it invigorates and energizes. And I think of two things. One is going to a Toronto Blue Jays game, at Salem Field. Am I getting it right? And I'm there in June, mid-June. Yankees and Blue Jays. So there's a lot of buzz. Obviously, it's a lot of Yankee buzz, but it's buzz. It's a beautiful June night, and I'm with friends. We're over. We're across the street having some beers and wings, and the whole experience. And I walk out, and Pearl Street Grill. We walk out, and I see this buzz, all these folks and people just migrating to this state. And it was, I think that the attendance that night was under 2,000. I think it was 1,700. It was still in the early stages before things were opening up. And I said, all this for that. Okay, so let's, or maybe it was maybe it was 7,000. I take that back. 7,000, yes. And all of that for 7,000. And I said, okay, multiply that times 9 or 8. And what do you get? What would that be like on a Sunday, on a Thursday night, on a Monday night, and all the surrounding areas? And maybe a convention center, as we've seen some of these drawings and such. It just feels like if that's not what we end up with, it's a miss. It's got to be bigger. Even though football is the essence of it, it's got to be bigger than that. The thought process should be, I think, for the community, bigger than that. Easy for me to say, but I am also speaking as a taxpayer, as you are. So, there is something on the line here for it, and you want it to be done right. Either way, it won't be cheap. Either way, tickets are going to be far more than they are, and every other, and probably seat license and all that stuff. All those costs that are going to come with it, whether it's Orchard Park or here, but I just don't see the need for it to continue to be there. You can have a practice facility there. I worked for the Cleveland Browns. We had our practice facility in Berea, Ohio. Training camp was held there. It's worked out perfectly, I think, well, beautifully. And then the stadium's downtown. And on a game day, I know what that was like. It's electrifying, and the ingress egress worked out beautifully. And you go and you have dinner and you do all the stuff before and after the game. You could do all kinds of stuff, or tailgate. And I was in Baltimore recently when they played the Bengals this year, and there was the tailgating all over in various spots downtown. People were getting it done. I don't want to hear that you can't tailgate if you do downtown, because you can, and maybe you end up being a better experience. And the other point I was going to make too is I was in the M&T, the one Seneca Tower. With my daughter works for M&T, and they both do, but the one who works in there, and I'm looking at these views of the city, and I'm just saying, my God, how amazing would it be to have a stadium, to have a have a convention center, all that downtown.
And listen, you speak from experience. You've been to every city in the league lots of times. You've seen stadiums in the suburbs. You've seen stadiums in the cities, downtown state. You've seen both. And like you just pointed out, I mean, and so have I. There are definitely ways to make a downtown stadium work, and where it's feasible and a good experience for everybody, and also, helps economically for everybody too in the end. So, I mean, you speak from experience. You're just not throwing stuff out there. You've been there and done that and seen it, and I respect that a lot. I did talk to Tim O'Shea on one of these, who you of course know from the news, and he was telling me that there is, and I don't know, it's still sort of up in the air as to what I think they're going to do. And he was saying by the first of the year, hopefully there will be a decision ultimately made on what's going to happen. But he said and I think this would be okay. It doesn't really go to your downtown discussion, but he said there is the potential possibly at the Orchard Park site of maybe making it kind of like what they did with Gillette. I mean, where they built sort of a city around the stadium,
Patriot Place. Yeah, Patriot Place.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I still think from the comparing the economics and the ability to spend the money there and all of that, and also that was built during the highest of high times of a team that won 6 Super Bowls and went to 8 over a period of time or more. But I think during that window of time, it was 8, if I'm not mistaken. That's a whole different discussion of driven by success and markets. You've got a melding of the Boston area, greater Boston area, and Providence, and you're close to Rhode Island. You're in Massachusetts, the borderline. I just think that there's a convergence there that's a little bit different, a lot different, not a little, a lot different than what you'd have. And I think what Tim was talking about too, I've heard the same thing, like smaller scale version of that, like a Buffalo version of some retail that you could put around it. And of course you could do that. I still don't think that satisfies what's around it. Yeah, there are some restaurants and bars and whatever near, but they've been there. A lot of them have been there for a very long time or have changed hands. I think if you do something in the centerpiece, do something within your downtown area, and easy to say it. I know there's a lot of hurdles to jump to get it right, but you're doing more that has a more long-lasting effect, I think. And it still has to go, to me, beyond football as far as the thought process. But again, easy for me to say.
I've taken way too much of your time, but I have to ask one last question. Obviously, we've not really touched on the Bills at all. So, they pre-buy, they're hammering teams pre-buy, right? Just hammering teams. Tennessee happens, the bye. You get a bad first half against the Dolphins. They bounce back. You think, okay, they're back. Then they fart in Jacksonville, and it's terrible. And then the Jets, they beat them up like they should, right? So I guess my question is, I mean, the Bills have the Kansas City win that I think is a good win, I guess. They played Tennessee. You could argue probably should have beaten them, didn't. But the argument can be made, what are the Bills, right? I mean, the wins they have are against arguably bad teams, and they have a much tougher schedule ahead of them, I would think.
Well, you got to, first of all, your schedule is your schedule. That's real sage. But you got to play the teams that are there, and however those outcomes, whatever those are.
You are so Belichickian right now.
Yeah, it tells you. Yeah, but it tells you what it tells you what your team is or isn't to a great extent. You're wondering, when will the real Bills stand up, or what are the real Bills? I don't think there's a doubt about their quality. And I say that because what has been consistent in the 9 games they've played, in 8 of them, they've played lights out or close to lights out defense. Okay. Foundationally, that you hear the phrase travels well, keeps you in every game. I mean, that is, I know, again, old school core football, but that really speaks. And there's a reason why that's got a lot of merit to it, because there's history that shows us that you if you have that going for you, you have a lot going for you, and it can help you make up for whatever is or isn't working on the offensive side. And on the offensive side, I still think you have not a good quarterback, a great quarterback in Josh Allen. Not always played great football or as often as he did, it seems, in 2020, and that we knew he was on his way to, the numbers and so forth that would put him in the conversation for MVP. He may not necessarily be that guy right now, but he's far more than good enough to be what they need him to be. And what's around him is still outstanding and dynamic in the obvious names. Stephon Diggs, go down the list. I think Emmanuel Sanders was a great pickup. The hemming and hawing about the O-line and the run game is somewhat merited, but the running game was an issue or a question last year, as I recall. And as I recall, the Bills were second in the league in scoring, second in the league in total defense, third in the league in passing, 20th in running. I think that stat, that number, did not derail them. That was not why the Buffalo Bills didn't get to the Super Bowl. Okay. The reason they didn't get to the Super Bowl, I still think, was the defense held them back for that one game, or maybe made it perilous in others. They won 13 games with all those questions, and they helped repair a lot of that with the drafting they did and so forth. And we're seeing the way this defense gets after quarterbacks. And I just think that, and the coaching is still sound. I definitely got after, by the way, even though I'm, quote, retired from the Buffalo News, I'm still doing things like, WGRZ, and I do some on-air stuff with Adam Bonini, who's great. And I write for their website. And in that context, and I also do Sirius XM, NFL radio. But in that context, I guess in both contexts, I got after Sean McDermott. I said after the Jacksonville game, I was shocked by how ill-prepared they looked, how, they just weren't ready to play a game. That's on the head coach. That is on the head coach. And I think he took the lack of preparation to heart, not what I said. I don't care. I don't think he even heard me or cared. And he shouldn't, by the way, listen to anybody on the outside. That's the noise. But in terms of his own self-evaluation and the staff and the team and the players, and then what you saw with the Jets, same scenario, another crappy opponent, except this time they did what they should have done against Jacksonville. They were ready. They were energetic. They came in looking with a purpose. Well, shouldn't take that every week, by the way, to do that against some bad teams. They're going to have, they're going to play the Jets again. But you're right. The schedule gets tougher. The question is, and this isn't a question about the Bills' lack of anything, but they've got something, I think, to compete with in the way of the rise, I think, of the Patriots from the ashes of last year, and what's going on with Mac Jones and, getting them twice in December. It looks, obviously they're right on the tail, but it looks like there's something there, something that will challenge the Bills and other teams, but especially for that division championship. And that's what they got to focus on. And it has nothing to do with saying, well, are they equipped to challenge them? I think they're equipped to challenge and beat anybody. They were one play away from beating the Tennessee Titans, who by all arguments right now are the best team in the AFC. What's the gap between them and the Bills? You could say the Bills are the best still in the AFC, if not right up there as the best of the NFL or in the conversation. So that isn't what concerns me. What concerns me is Mac Jones, who you see right now as a rookie, going to play at that level, at the off the charts type of level that he can reach with this defense that's playing well then. And he's had some bad moments. I still say this, he's a rookie. And as more and more is known about what he's about by Leslie Frazier, Sean McDermott, as they study this guy and the coaching staff, they're going to have answers for him that he didn't even know there were questions about come that game, I'm sure, on Monday Night Football. That's just a guess.
Okay, so I guess to summarize, don't worry about your Bills.
Don't worry about the Bills. No, I mean, worry. Yeah. Which is like telling people, don't worry about your kids. Don't worry about, of course you worry about the Bills. You worry about the Bills if you're a Bills fan, because that's what Bills fans do. And, it's okay. It's the love of this game. It's what I will never, I'm blessed because I've had an opportunity for a lot of years, Bull, as you know, to do something I love, but the reason it exists, the ability to, to write, to broadcast, to whatever, to do books, all of that comes from a place of this incredible love for this thing. And it's not a diversion. In many ways, it's more religion for folks. Here especially, and I've been in this market obviously since 1982, haven't consistently been here the whole time, in and out with Cleveland and NFL.com, but it's a true football town. I remember once when somebody, I don't remember who, tried to make the case in the media, this is more of a hockey town, while the Bills were going through their period of,
the drought,
the wilderness years.
Yeah.
And I laughed at that. I said, I'm sorry. And again, I don't say this to offend Sabre fans. And I enjoy watching the Sabres as a fan. It's the only time watching a sporting event when I can truly, it's not the only time, but it's like among the few times I can relax and just enjoy the entertainment value of it, except they weren't entertaining and they seem to be more this year. But there's no way. This has always been and always will be a football town. And football is breeds. There's a segment of hockey fans. There's an entire world of football fans here.
For sure. So what I've decided to save for you for the next one that we do of these, and
sure,
totally on your schedule, maybe it's after the Super Bowl, whatever. I want to ask you about your books and how you do it. I want to ask you about whether or not I can be so Vic Carucci with Rich Gensler, because you need to write a book, my friend. All the things that you've seen and done and witnessed. And I want to ask you a lot about that. And so we're going to basically create our own sort of video book with you the next time we do this. For now, though, obviously, congratulations on a great career that you extend. Even though you pretend to be retired, you're really not. You should
I've been failing at retirement. Somebody told me that. He said, you're failing at retirement. Right. I say, yeah, kind of. But no, it's and real quick, the Buffalo News was terrific. The experience of, because remember, I had 2 stints there, and they gave me the opportunity to return in 2014, and great experience. Worked for some wonderful people along the way. Who were nothing but, again, the editors in every possible way, trying to make it as welcoming as possible. And then when we had thought about, my wife and I talked about this for 2 years, and my daughters, we talked about it for about 2 years, and I was going to do it in 2020. I said 2020 will be the year, and then 2020 happened, and then we decided, as we got closer to the spring of this year, I think this is the time to do it. And to their credit, I guess, the folks at the News tried to talk me out of it and said, let's think about this. Let's not be too hasty. I said, it's not hasty. I put a lot of thought into it. How about stick around for one more year? Give us one more year. You don't want to miss this Bills train, that's going to go all the way to the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I said, this is the right time. I know this is the right time, and it has been. And I know I'm still involved enough to stay with it, but more time to spend with family, spend with grandchildren. To, we got 4 of them, and that's been heaven. That's been the greatest part of this. And not that I wouldn't see them otherwise. It's just that you can do more, and there's just, your schedule is just it's a lot looser when you don't have the day-to-day grind. That doing that job well, and by the way, they continue to do a great job. Jay Skursky, Mark Gaughan, Jason Wolf, Catherine Fitzgerald, the whole crew there of football writers, and of course, all under the leadership of Josh Barnett, who does a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Again, congratulations, and continue. We're still going to watch you on Channel 2 and read your stuff online, and we're going to listen to you. For those of you that have Sirius XM, it's Channel 88. Is that right?
Channel 88.
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll read your books, and we're going to buy Super Bowl blueprints for all of our football fans on our Christmas lists. And we hope to do this again very soon, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have more of it now, so it's easier. But I appreciate you doing this. This has been absolutely awesome. And I cannot wait for the next one, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about your life and your career and the things that you've covered and done. So start thinking of some things to talk about when we do this again.
No, you think about things we should talk about.
No
I'm
problem.
retired.
I got it. You're right.
All right, Paul.
Commish, you're the man. Thanks, buddy.